Welcome to a limited edition of St. Olga Interviews. The topic is cloning centers, a pretty sensitive one, but one that, in my opinion, needs addressing more so than any other in the disclosure movements. It's, the most urgent, the most immediate, most provable. And when I heard that my guest Arkheim is actually well versed in it and is able to keep an interview, I jumped at the chance. I was myself skeptical about this whole cloning center and ghostwriting topic, but after I found out that some friends of mine actually get taken to so-called parties in their sleep, which they can't avoid, they can't block, and oftentimes can't even remember. Then it became personal as well for me, and more information is coming out. So Arkheim let me in private on his own personal experiences and only experiences. He's only talking from, his lived stuff. And so I was wondering if we could just dive in general cloning center questions, such as when did you first piece it together that it was cloning center? Was it before or after seeing Donald Marshall?
So I heard of Donald Marshall because I was talking about how it was basically in people that I was confiding in privately at first when I was telling them about the music aspect of the stuff that's happened to me, because people that I always say every time, Donald Marshall, you should look into Donald Marshall. So I finally did eventually. And as far as the cloning, when I realized it was cloning, it took me a long time. Because the reason why they keep us in the dark with all these technologies and cloning and wormholes and time travel and all this stuff is if they keep us in the dark, it makes it really hard for us on the so-called bottom of the pyramid, who are heavily programmed and with mind control programming. It makes it hard for us to see what's even actually happening to us. Because like you said, you have friends that experience it and the memories are unclear and stuff like that. But I've had things like physical evidence and memories that coincided with the here and now reality and then basically got confirmed by what I experienced, if that makes any sense.
Independently.
They talk about they'll talk about your normal, like there's clones that they have that are underground that are aware of us up here, and they'll talk about us. They're not supposed to, but they do. And it really, when I watched the movie Us, which is a newer film, it's a horror movie, and it's basically soft disclosure. They talk about subway tunnels in the beginning of the movie. They would have been better off saying just going full on and talking about the military bases, but of course they didn't do that. But it's more than just subways. There's the military bases and everything. And in this horror movie Us, it just showed that there are copies and they came to the surface, and then it was like the copy was trying to kill the original and vice versa, because both of each other viewed the other as like some sort of abomination. And it's what I guess haven't heard Donald talk about or anyone else is the voodoo doll aspect of it, where if you have a copy of someone in the here and now that is them, that is you, that is your consciousness, you can't, it's hard to explain, but it is you. It gets very confusing. I'm not even going to claim that I can wrap my mind around it fully with the cloning and the consciousness transfer and everything else and how it all works, but it is you. These clones, they're you. It's your consciousness. And it just took me a really long time to understand the memories that I have and put them in context and make me understand what was going on here. And I've had some pretty strange experiences, and it's very dark down there. What's going on? The people that are in control of these copies of us, I believe what they call themselves, and I'm not saying they're the only ones. I just know this group name, and it came out through an altar that I was communicating of mine, and it was Ordo Tempulum Nephilim. And so I looked it up and translated it from Latin. And what that means is Order of the Temple of Nephilim, which makes sense because we know that we are descendants of the like the Anunnaki created the Nephilim created us, what have you, and it's all a whole thing. And the people that are involved in this cult obviously worship the Nephilim, worship the Anunnaki. Basically, is what it seems like to me. My memories are still like I'm still assimilating them. I'm still putting them all together, but I remember that, and I remember how their rituals work because they have a set of rituals. Like for instance, with the music industry, they have a set up ritual, a way that they put the loosh, the dark energy, the vril energy, or whatever you want to call it. They put it into the songs. They have a rituals that they use to do it. I'm sorry if I'm going on a tangent here.
No problem. It's a huge topic. It's tough to wrangle, but I just wanted to differentiate because if we include all sorts of clones, it might get just a bit overwhelming. So I just wanted to maybe focus, if we can, on the REM-driven clones, like sleeping time ones.
Okay.
For example, it said that REM's sleep stage is only like a few hours long, maybe 2 or so. And that also means that you're simply like bilocated that way. So you're not using time travel like with other clones. So that would be the difference. And would you say that you've been able to isolate between the two?
I can't tell when it comes from my memories whether it's like a time travel thing or whatever. But I guess what I would say is here's what I think the REM clone center kind of stuff happens. It's like I'll be sleeping, and they take me. And for me, the first memories of like the cloning center that I've worked at, which is one that I believe I used to think it was in Appleton, but I worked with a remote viewer, and he said that it's looking more like it's in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, but that's close to me enough. And with the technology they have, even if they want to physically take me, it's not that far away. But obviously, it doesn't even need to be. Distance isn't really an issue with these, I don't think, with these cloning centers and the consciousness retrieval. I don't claim to know how the technology works. I just know that it definitely works, and they snatched me with it. And the memories that I have of the cloning facility are of this. Okay, it's all white. Everything's white on white. The people wear white. Just white everywhere, white everything. They're really obsessed with the color white for whatever reason. Maybe this is overstimulating. It is really overstimulating when everything's all white. I don't know what's up with that, but
I can add to that if you want.
sure.
So the Vril 3s, the Type 3s, the tall ones that were disclosed in Star Wars, apparently they don't just see white. They're the ones that insist on this, according to Donald Marshall, that they don't just see the white. They see a lot of other little nuances that are just invisible to us. So that's the
Maybe that makes sense. That'd be a good explanation. But for me, I always thought it was some sort of like psychological manipulation thing to like mess you up mentally. But maybe that's the reason why. Yeah, I could only assume, but that makes sense. But yeah, what I remember is okay. They have copies of lots of people that I know. In the community that I live in Wisconsin, they have lots of copies of them. Well, at least like what I mean by lots of them is of one of each person that's up here. Certain people. It's not. I don't think it's everyone that lives in the town. Maybe it is, but they have copies, and they have a red room. And I don't know if people are familiar with the concept of the red room, but basically these dark web sickos, people will pay to watch people get tortured in what's called a red room. And they have the red rooms in these bases. They have them. And I'm a janitor. I'll wake up down there and it'll just be, it's like I'm MK Ultra mind controlled out. Like I'm really like in a daze, and I'm just like, I clean, and it's kind of like I've done it a million times and I'm not thinking, and it's like I'm a robot. But I remember this one time, and this is an important thing that happened, and I hate to put him on Front Street because he's not public and he's a famous person, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I feel like the information is important. It's paramount, and it's bigger than me or him. But basically, there's a copy. Willem Dafoe, the actor, the famous actor, he's from the famous town. He's from the town that I'm from. Okay, and they have a copy of him down there. And there was this time where me and Willem were cleaning because they make them do the same thing. You know, we're wearing the white jumpsuits and everything else. And here's the thing too: is it's an altar down there that has a different name than me. I can't remember my name, to be honest with you. But something tells me Walter, and this is the first time that I ever. It's a certain altar of me they have down there. But anyway, Willem Dafoe, his altar's name is David, and we're cleaning, and he puts up like a garbage can on the table, and because there's cameras on us and stuff, and he kind of says, "Hey, are you in there, kid? Are you in there?" Because we're both zonked out, and he must have snapped out of it, and so he's trying to snap me out of it, and so I snapped out of it, and I was like, "Yeah, what's going on? I'm in here," and he's like, "You're still up there?" I'm like, yeah. He's like, where are you? Are you still in that town? Are you still in Appleton? And I was like, yeah, I still live there. And he goes, kid, I'm so disappointed in you. He's like, you got to get out of there. He's like, that place is built around us. He's like, it's set up to keep us down. That town is set up to keep you down. He's like, if I would have stayed there, I'd be a nobody. Because I left, I'm a famous actor. He's like, you just told me I had to leave. And I woke up remembering it. It was one of the few times where I woke up and I had the memory clear. And for me, my mind was messed up by it because I didn't understand the memory at the time, and it seemed really weird. And like I'm talking to Willem Dafoe, like it kind of seemed like maybe it was just a dream, right? But here's where I got verified for me. I cleaned this school, okay, and the school is heavy duty involved in MK Ultra. It's got like this charter where they send the poor kids to this one school, all the poor kids, all the low, and you know how it works with the lower class kids. Their parents are less to be likely to see certain signs and certain things like that. And I worked at the school as a janitor for it, and they told me stories of how little boys in white, like a little boy in a white jumpsuit appeared in one of the bathrooms there. Um, and it freaked this lady out, and the church wasn't open yet because it's connected to a church. It's across the street, so it's very sketchy when you think about it and realize it. Nobody that works there realizes anything. They think it's haunted. They think it's ghosts. But yeah, they told me about this kid in the white jumpsuit, and then that school is connected to Solar Warden, which is a whole nother thing. But the white jumpsuit, it made me I had that memory of me talking to Willem and the white jumpsuits, and it freaked me out because I was like, okay, wait a minute. I realized it was real. That was a memory. That wasn't a dream or something. That was a memory. And it gets crazier because like, so I talked about this in an interview already, which you've probably watched the interview, and they knew down there that I talked, and that Willem talked to me. So what I remember, they made me sit on a chair. I was like, locked to the chair, handcuffed to the chair, and he was on the table in the red room, and they pulled out his teeth one by one in front of me, and they made me watch it. They made me watch because he talked to me, because we're not supposed to talk. We're not supposed to say anything to each other. That's why I had to put the garbage can on the table and stuff. It's because he had to make it look like, do it really quick and make it look like he was just cleaning or something. And yeah, it was that was a heavy duty memory to realize was real. And I guess one of the other messed up aspects of it is like, I do think that when it comes to these clones and these cloning facilities, I know that you're saying you want to talk about the REM retrieval. I do think that Solar Warden, it seems like it might be connected to this program, to this stuff. I'm not going to state that as fact, though. I'm just going to say just the fact that that school that I worked at and I cleaned, it was Solar Warden. The kids there, they had this program there. There, I was training the kids off world. I remember all this stuff. It's all connected to it, and the fact that there was the kid in the white jumpsuit appearing in one of their bathrooms, which people have talked about how there's certain trips that'll portal you or you'll teleport. That's what I think it was. It was an accidental teleportation, and then they yanked him back or whatever. Once they realized he was gone, they immediately yanked him back. You know, and this little boy. That's what I think happened. And the fact that it happened in the school that I know is run by Solar Warden, it makes me think, well, then the two must be connected. Am I stating it as a fact? No, I'm just saying that there's these two things that are they related? I guess that's up for everybody to discern. Maybe more evidence will come later and we'll be able to verify that. But I'm just going to drop that little nugget out there that I do think that some of these secret space programs, it's all connected, right? It's all connected. So, but what I do think with the REM retrievals, what it is if it was easy to do that, right? If it was accessible and lots of different groups had it, why would they bother to physically take people? Which they're still doing. They physically take people all the time. They'll open up a portal and literally physically grab you to take you, right? And I had the same Solar Warden people do that to me. They physically took me to threaten me, which is a whole nother story too. So it makes me I have all these questions. Like I don't know whether they're related or not, but if there's still groups physically taking people, that means that the REM technology isn't accessible to everyone. And from what I understand, and I feel like this might even be like a repressed memory that one of my alters has or something, is that technology, the REM retrieval, where you can take people when they're dreaming, you have to rent it out from ET. And a human can't operate the tech, is what I think it is. So you basically have to rent out an alien or an ET, certain ET, to work for a human group and do the retrievals for you, steal the people in their sleep. Or maybe it's they have high level psychics that do it too. It doesn't, whatever it is that they're doing, it's not easy. Let's put it that way. And I think that it's really expensive. I think it costs a lot of money. I think that if there's ET that have to do it, that would explain they'd be have to giving resources and stuff like that for an ET to do that. You know, it's like you'd have to pay them, right? You have to pay them something. So that's why I think that it's not the norm. That's why I think that not every group is using it, because I don't think it's as easy. I don't think it's like I think only certain really high level groups have it. Like really the ones that are like, and it's very coveted technology and very protected. The groups that have it don't want it to fall in anybody else's hands. That's what it seems like to me. Because like I said, I mean, it's common sense, right? If it was easy, then every group would be using it. And why bother physically snatching people? But they're still physically snatching people. So that's just something I have to say about it. And like, you know, it's just kind of putting pieces of the puzzle together and try to make a clear picture as much as I can with the information I have.
Right. Well, when you said that you remembered that William Defoe memory after you woke up, that does very much suggest that it was REM driven. And that also makes me sometimes wonder when you hear people talk about other types of experiences, such as SSP, just as after they wake up. What if those were just, you know, you being taken, because apparently they do take you in the cloning chambers, centers, and project, you know, the simulacrum that you're in a mission and you're a secret agent. That's just part of it, of course. I mean, of course, SSP is real, but that's also true. I mean, so, but also about the Willem Dafoe anecdote, did I understand correctly that they also make you, so we're also to understand that he is altered as well, and you as well, which is a new thing, and makes sense, by the way, that you would also be altered, but it's not an export territory, but it would suggest that they also have you do menial jobs there, which does add up. You never hear about that though. So I guess they use clones for just about anything. And also I wanted to add in, if you can discuss any like cloning actual room, like stacked cloning tanks or something like that.
Yeah, I can describe it. It's how they usually are is the from what I've seen is and this is more than once in more than different faction, but with the REM centers, it's very similar, but it's always all white. That's like, but anyway, um, they have these tanks against the wall, and they're usually leaned back slightly. They don't have to be, but for some reason, I'm thinking I remember them kind of being a little bit leaned back slightly, just slightly, and it's these tanks against the wall, and they got water in them and stuff like that. And you got a tube down in your throat and all that stuff, and you wake up in it, and they pull pull the tube out and everything else, and they tell you where you are. Um, they have that aspect of it where there's clones of you against the wall, but they don't have to. They can pull the clone out first before they put you in it. So I've had it happen where I wake up in the tank, but you usually freak out a lot, and they don't like that. So they'll usually just have you. They learn. I think they learn that it's best. I think it takes a little more work for them, but it's worth it for them to just take you out first, and then you so that way you just kind of wake up and you're not in a tank like with a thing in your throat. But yeah, I have had that happen before where I've literally woken up and that's how they store them, I guess. Is in these tanks in the wall, but I also remember like body bags, like white body bags. They have numbers on them, and they have like a name on them. And
But you're still alive.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's like a clone in there, and they can just open it up and put it on a table, and then put your consciousness in there, and something that I think that's not being talked about is for whatever reason I think that like I said, there's a human element to this. It's like they're not like turning on a computer and typing in a coordinate and then there's like a being has to do it, right? Like a psychically powerful being has to pull your consciousness out and put it into someone's body. It's like a ritual. It's like an occult ritual thing, kind of thing. And but yeah, I wouldn't say it's the same across the board either with the cloning centers. Like I think the best thing that I could do is moving forward, instead of talking about the memories of the one that I'm tethered to down in the dumb and here in the United States, I think it'd be good to talk about my memories of the cloning center in Sweden, because that's definitely an REM thing, and I don't think I know I wasn't physically taken there because I know I woke up in a clone over and over again. So I think moving forward, maybe I'll just stick to that in order to make it less confusing because I know you do want to stick to the REM cloning thing. And I do think it's important to talk about that cloning center in Sweden.
Yeah, by all
Because
means. And it's, by the way, it is instantaneous, the transfer, and you're right. It doesn't really matter. They have it down to a science. I don't know about all the cloning centers, but definitely the celebrity one in British Columbia is really, it's just passe to just transfer someone. You just the minute you enter REM sleep stage, a light comes on and they just press a button. It's as simple as that. And they each have a remote control designated to every person there. But that was very interesting, but what you said, because it totally corroborates. This is just from your experience. But yeah, if you could go over the some of the rituals and some of the songwriting and what have you that you have lived through in the Sweden Cloning Center.
okay, so basically, how this one happened is I was a little boy, probably around 7 or 8 years old, and I woke up in this cloning center, and these memories came back after they the these memories are fairly new, even though this happened a long time ago. I didn't remember this right away. Um, but I would wake up in the cloning center, and this guy would pick me up, and he would tell me he called me the little boy who sings. I don't even think he called me by my name. He called me the little boy who sings, and I think it was basically like what they would do is they'd wake me up. They'd he'd pick me up from the center. He'd bring me in his car to either, you know, some sort of party, hunting party thing or something like that, because this they got have that in Sweden. They do the hunting parties and stuff
Well,
like
just
that.
like in that movie, The Hunt.
Yeah, it's just like that. Um, they do all that stuff, but also this is how it works with the music people, and this is what Donald Marshall isn't talking about, and this is where our testimony maybe isn't the same, but I can only speak to what I remember and the truth of what I experienced. And I'm not saying any of this to discredit Marshall, Donald Marshall. I'm just simply saying what I remember happening and what I experienced.
No,
And what
we're both big fans of his, so we both are keen to
yeah,
talk.
yeah. I'm not trying to talk bad about him, but I know he said he wrote like all Britney Spears' songs and
Hit me, baby,
all
one more time. Yep.
yeah, and all that stuff. And all I can say is, look, I don't think he wrote all of it because I remember being there, and this is how I remember it. They I even watched a documentary on these guys, and it all winds up with what I remember, and it's kind of hard to accept as reality, but it is what it is. Like even like for me that experienced it, it's very hard to accept it as true, but this is how it works. They had a side room where in the a documentary that you can watch about them, they say it's where all the magic happened, where the songwriting happened, and all the guys were clamoring to go in the room and work on the song. And it's like, you know, if you're a musician and you write music, you probably know that like writing a song isn't like this free for all party where you just let anyone join and they just throw ideas around. Like that's not typically how it works. So what they were doing in that room was ritual abuse of me. They would make me sing. They'd tell me to sing, and I would sing melodies. I would sing stuff, you know. And Max Martin says, so this is connected to, okay, so this is connected to Max Martin and Dennis Pop, okay? And this is Chiron Studios in Stockholm, Sweden, which after Dennis Pop died, Max Martin changed it to Maratone Studios. But Chiron is the Greek god who was a healer that was immortal, but he was wounded and constantly wounded and longed for death. Okay? This is what these guys named their recording studio after, is the Greek god that was immortal and wounded and longed for death. And the reason why they named it that is because they have clones of all of their assets. Those pop stars are assets, okay? Not pop stars, assets, okay? Well, that's what people need to understand. The military owns the entertainment industry. It's all mind control. They own it. They control everything, okay? Yes, of course, there are people who come up organically and stuff like that, because, you know, I know that from being in the music industry, but in the here and now. But the big pop stars and stuff like that, they manufacture them. And it's not necessarily that they literally make them in a cloning center, kind of like people think. Like it's more like, okay, what they do is they get them when they're young. That's what the Disney Club thing is. They get them when they're young, and they get their parents to sign a contract with them. And basically in the contract, it says that and I think they warm them up to this kind of. I don't think they go this deep right away, but eventually it gets to the point where they're like, "Look, we really like your kid. Um, we think they're going places, but you don't understand how this industry works. Like you got to control everything, their image, everything. You got to make it perfect. So you got to sign this contract. We're gonna give them fake parents that are cool and hip." And you know they're gonna have to change their hair color, change their name, and like in what this is called in the CIA and in clandestine programs, it's called being sheep dipped. Now these people don't realize this at all. They're being fucking sheep dipped, and that's what they do. They do to these people. They destroy. This was easier to do before the information age, before the internet was so big. I'm sure they've refined it and changed it now. But basically, they would sign their once they sign that contract, the idea was, okay, you're gonna have to live this lie of a life, right? But what they actually do is they MK Ultra them and erase their memories, erase the parents' memories, give them these fake parents that they have implanted memories of them being their real parents. And that's why you see that with Britney Spears. She's one of these assets. That's why, she wasn't even at her own wedding. One of her ex-boyfriends who actually cares about her and can see something weird's going on showed up, TikTok live did or whatever, and she wasn't even there. You can see that the videos she's putting out are CGI. They're not even real. Everyone talked about free Britney, and now they think she's free. I remember Britney Spears, okay, from these programs. I remember her from the studio, and what I remember is she was basically a normal little girl in this weird MK Ultra situation that she probably, of course, she didn't know what she was getting herself into. She was a little girl, and I just remember that when I would come there to the studio, they'd bring me there, and I wouldn't remember her, and she would remember me. And she thought I was joking with her at first. And it's like, eventually she realized, like, okay, this boy doesn't really remember me. And eventually got worse and worse. Like, she realized how messed up it was, and they started treating her worse and worse. And, of course, they used her as a sex slave and all that stuff. And what they would tell her is, this is just the way it is. This is the way the industry is. And the thing that's messed up is, I mean, we all know that kind of is the way the industry is, unfortunately. Like, the Harvey Weinstein thing, like, why would people think that he's the only guy that was doing that? They're all doing that. And as far as the ritual aspect of it, when they're making the songs, that Dennis Pop had what he called the hit light. It was a red light that would activate during the recording sessions when he said that he knew it was a hit. He knew it was a hit. Now, I talked about the red rooms earlier in the interview. It's all connected. This Ordo, Tempelum, Nephilim, the color red is connected to the ritual abuse. It's why you hear about the red shoe club. It's why you hear about the red doors when you enter the I see a red door and I want to paint it black. That line in that song. It's about when you enter the red. You enter these ritual rooms where they do this ritual stuff to children. They sacrifice them and stuff like that. They have a red door, and the red light would be going off when in the other room they're doing ritual abuse of the person whose melody they had in the song, and they're putting the louche of the person being ritually abused in the song. Now, what they would do is they would gang rape me or Brittany or whoever it was.
The clones of you.
The clones, right? And they would kill you when you're in the moment of or forced orgasm. They'd kill you, and then they inject that louche into the song, and it's a way of putting dark. It's like sexual energy. So when people feel it, they don't feel the darkness of it. They just feel the sexual energy. But it's obviously very dark. And they literally would siphon the sexual energy and put it in the music, the psychic energy of it in the music. So when you hear the music, you get like sexually energized. And they did that with the Beatles and stuff like that. And that's why the girls were literally like orgasming and stuff like that when they're watching them play and stuff like that. Is because they had this mind control in it, like that was intentionally put there, this sexual psychic energy that was intentionally put there to make that happen. And as far as the music industry aspect of the cloning centers and the cloning programs, and what Donald Marshall talks about how he makes music for them and stuff like that. I'm 100% there with Marshall, with Donald Marshall. My only reiteration of what he's saying is that he's not the only one. There's other people that they do this to. There's lots of people that they do this to. There isn't one guy they're doing it to. One of the people that I know that they're doing this to, I know this is going to sound really insane to people, but is Napoleon. They have a clone of Napoleon, and he's very musical, believe it or not, and there's lots of hit songs that were made by fucking Napoleon, I swear to God.
So the same clone, I mean, the same likeness as the one that we know, and the same spirit.
Yeah, it's Napoleon. They have, I know that is going to be like one of the things where like people are going to be like, come on, Napoleon.
No, because...
it's true.
Yeah.
they had his DNA. He was part of Montauk, and in these programs, Napoleon wasn't the only time travel Montauk kind of thing he did. Not to break off, but they had basically his DNA and his consciousness was out there on the black market because of Montauk, and they knew that he made music because they make us make war songs in these programs, and he made some good ones that got famous. And I don't know if it was in his life as Napoleon, probably in a different life or whatever, but that was hidden that people don't know about. But yeah, he wrote songs. He writes music. He wrote music, and they have clone of him, and he's kind of in the thick of this, like we all are, where he doesn't necessarily have a choice on where his consciousness goes. And that's what I guess that's one thing I want to point out about this is a form of slavery that since we don't understand it, or we understand it, you and I understand it, but since the public doesn't understand it, that's kind of how it happens. Like if the public knew that this technology was real, knew that okay, oh, this is how it all works. Oh, okay, this is how it all operates, then they'd probably stop it. They'd probably like, okay, well, that's not cool, and stop it. But if they don't understand, oh, clones do exist. Oh, you can just throw people's consciousness around all over the place and fuck with them. Sorry to swear, but mess around with them. Um, since people don't understand that, that's kind of how they get away with it. And what I want the viewers to understand with this is, they kind of have a list of like everyone, and I feel like it's not us like secret space program people or people like Donald Marshall, where he has some sort of valuable resource like the ability, ideas and songs and stuff that they keep taking them. You can just be attractive, or you can just be, basically there's nobody that's safe from this technology is what I'm trying to get at. There's no reason for anyone to think that you're safe when you go to sleep at night. I know that sounds like a horror movie kind of thing, but it's true. And that's kind of why I think that people should maybe take us more seriously, is because it's like, look, if they can do this to us, and they are doing this to us, then what on God's green earth makes you think that they're not going to do it to you, your children, your loved ones and family, the people you care about, your friends, your neighbors? Like, what you know what I mean? Like, nobody's really actually safe from this technology. And like I said too, with the facility down there with everyone in white, like I remember quite a few people down there that are on the surface, that I know in the here and now, that they would never believe me for an instant if I told them that they had like this copy of them underground, and who knows what they're doing with it. I don't know, like, but there's this version of you down there that they're messed, like, they would never believe that, because they have a system set up where Donald Marshall even said it in his testimony, where it's like they let him remember, and for whatever reason, because they wanted him to kind of mess with them. So that's why they did that. For me, I got lucky. They took me again recently. Dennis Pop and Max Martin was connected to that, and this Planet Centurion 5, and Centurion is connected to Chiron Studios and all this stuff. But because they took me again recently, it made me remember Dennis Pop and Max Martin, and then go back into my memories and then remember what happened when I was a kid. So that's the reason why I remember the stuff that happened to me. Yeah, I don't know. That was...
No, yeah, it's good. But so Dennis Pop, that means that he was reanimated. He's not dead like we assume. But also...
yeah, what it is they have a version of him on a planet called Centurion 5, and there's a recording studio there, and they bring people there to force them to make music. They isolate them there. It's kind of like a prison, a cushy prison, but a prison. And they force you to make a bunch of music. And Dennis Pop is the one who sets you up there and is in charge of stuff there. Max Martin is the one who's in charge of stuff on Earth. And so there's this aspect to it where they actually have a recording studio on another planet that's connected to this recording industry stuff.
It's the capital of Nachtwaffen, right? Centurion, the capital planet.
It could be. See, because this is what I remember is, okay, so I have an altar. This is funny. I have an altar on Centurion 5 whose name is Marshall James Howard, and he's very normal. He's like a construction worker. And there's even a point where I remember I was on that planet and I was getting memories back of Earth, and I was like telling him about Earth on that planet, and it was like me telling people about Centurion 5 here. Like, some people were like, wow, really? And other people were like, man, this guy's crazy, like that kind of thing. Like, it was just like that over there, and they tell him lies over there and half truths and things like that, and they don't know the reality of what's going on. But all I remember is like there's an American colony, there was a Italian colony, and then there was a German colony, and then eventually they made a French colony, which was a little smaller than the rest of them. But for a while, but when the French colony was being built, the French shared their colony with the Italians, and then once it finished, the most of them moved to the French colony. Some of them stayed in the Italian one, but yeah, and so it's not just German. This planet, it's a great resource. It's in some sort of weird time distortion bubble where stuff happens faster down there. So if they want to make something happen, it like they can be out here and like this much time passes and 3 times the amount of time will pass down there. So like you can get things done if you want things to happen really fast. So it's like a great resource for that. And like just yeah, it's that's what I remember about it. I've heard other people talk about Centurion, and this is Centurion 5, so this makes me think that there's more than one Centurion, and maybe it's not the same Centurion that everyone's talking about, but also maybe it is the same. My memories aren't, like I didn't have the context of of everything when I was living there, you know what I mean? But there's also a version of me there that was Ryan Sterling, who's he was a CIA operative. He was a CIA operative in the 50s through time travel people. I know it's before I was born with time travel. But yeah, he was a part of the time travel program there, like a Montauk type thing, where they just monitored the planet and made sure that everything was going good. And I guess more or less the story in Centurion 5 is Centurion is like the name for like a Greek, the leader of a Greek legion of soldiers that's numbers to around 300 or something like that. But it's connected to the fact that, okay, they needed military resources and they needed them fast, and there was some sort of battle that they needed to win, so they colonized that planet. There was a species that looked a lot like Admiral Akbar from Star Wars that lived there originally, but we colonized their planet and kind of made them they still live there, but they're like a lesser class and stuff like that, and kind of pushed away. And yeah, they basically, there was a war, like a battle that needed to be won, so they fought the battle, and once the battle got won, they thinned out the population, made it a super elite planet where like super elite people live, like famous people and people that are high up in the Breakaway. And there's this recording studio there. And the recording studio I remember when I first got there, I didn't remember Dennis Pop, obviously. If I did remember him, I probably would have freaked the fuck out because the guy had done some terrible things to me. But I didn't remember him. He's just this guy wearing sunglasses at a huge recording console. And he basically had this white powder on a plate, like a clear plate, and I was like, what are you trying to party? Are you trying to? He's like, no, this is TH13989B, and it connects your brain to the recording studio. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, it's pretty cool. And I'm just like, I'm a musician. I felt like a kid in a candy shop at first.
That's
I thought
the mind to voice technology that Donald Marshall also talks about, right? Where you hear your own voice and anything that you think about in your head.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, but also like there's a computer and there's a record. Basically, it's like, like Pro Tools is the industry standard. Well, the eventual evolution of like that recording technology is you can hook up your mind to it. You can move around the sounds with your mind. If a sound is a little bit off, instead of you having to like go into the computer and like turn knobs until it's just right, like you can just think it to be the way you want it to be, stuff like that. It's really quite brilliant. It's really quite wonderful. It's a beautiful experience to work with it and make music with it. It's awe-inspiring. It was a privilege to use that recording technology, just not in the way that where they were loosh farming, putting mind control messages in it, stuff like that. That's the part about it that I don't like. Yeah, but the thing is with that drug that he gave me is I think that it might not even necessarily be necessary to use that drug to connect to the computer. What it was is I got addicted to that drug and I would get violently ill and have tremors if I didn't take it. And it would only give me a little bit amount at a time from this computer. And I didn't know how to make it was timed, and there's no way I could like make more or whatever. And so what it was is it kept me stuck at the recording studio. It kept me stuck there. I couldn't leave. They didn't even have to like, there's a train. Literally, like I could just get in it and leave. You literally just tell it where you want. Tell it I want to go here, and or I want to leave, and it'll just bring you. And
so you're not being held hostage. You're not being held hostage, unlike our cloning centers.
Well, put it this way. I was brought to this place against my own will. Um, and it was a clone, and I got brought there, and I'm a musician. I like making music, and some guy shows me this recording studio that I can control with my brain. And at first you think, okay, this is cool, and I'm privileged. And they explain to you that he shows you the computer. When you make a song, dude, I know this sounds wild, but it's true. There's an AI computer that will tell you this song will work on this planet at this time, in this time period, and it'll estimate and tell you how well it will do where, and what people you should give what songs to and stuff like that. Because we make the songs and then we have to have like musicians in the real world say that they made them and play them and stuff like that.
Breakaway planet of humans.
And on our Earth, a lot of the songs on Earth were made this way too. But I just remember being like, okay, well, I'm privileged. It felt like a privilege at first, but then you realize, okay, you're a slave. So like it's like all these programs where it's like you're kind of not being paid and you're just being used for your labor. I mean, it's fun to make music. It's definitely better than like mining on the moon. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's still the same concept where you're not getting paid and somebody else is, and you're forced to be there, and they're stealing from you. They're stealing your labor. You're a slave. And with this drug, since I got violently ill from not taking it, I had to stay there. I was trapped there. It's like, that's what I'm trying to say. It's like I couldn't get the drug anywhere else. If I tried to not take it, it felt like I was gonna die. Maybe it would kill me. But what eventually I did is I eventually started saving up a little jar. What I did is I took off little tiny corners of the little thing it would give me, little tiny corners of it, and it made me sick. But I took like 2/3 of the line or whatever, or 3/4 or whatever, you know what I mean? And it made me feel sick to not take the full thing, but eventually I got used to it, and that's all I needed was that 3/4 of it or whatever. And I saved it up until I had a bunch of it, until I had a big jar full of it, and I did leave. And I remember I got in the fucking, and I kind of remembered the planet too, and I knew where I was kind of on, and
it's a jungle planet.
It's a jungle planet. Yeah, it is.
It's the same as Whitberg's. The elites live there, yeah.
Yeah, it's a jungle planet. And I got on the train. It brought me to this underground tunnel. There are these little white cars. They had like a little trunk so you could throw your bag or whatever in there, but there was only enough room for like 2 people. They're really tiny. They're electric powered. And I found one. I got in and I started driving down the highway, and I was in the city, and there are lights everywhere. And I kind of think the song Blinding Lights by The Weeknd, I wrote that song. And I think was kind of inspired by this moment where I was driving through the city. That drug makes you feel psychedelic. It does. Makes you feel like groovy kind of, And there are all the lights, and I'm driving, and I was alone for years at this point. There's no one around for years, and I just wanted another human being. And I knew there was this place in the city, this tower where someone that I knew and I cared about and I loved was. I tried to get to it, and I didn't even know for sure if they're going to be there. They kept me in the dark about a lot of things, but I tried to go, and I remember it was eerily empty. I remember that city was full of people at one point. It was eerily empty. There was not that much traffic. The lights were on and everything else like that. And I remember it was dark too. And Centurion, this planet had 2 suns. So this leads me to believe that they have like a dome they put over the city or something like that. I don't know. All I remember was dark. And I actually figured out where it is in the Milky Way too. I should have written that down. I figured that out recently. But anyway, it's in Alpha Centauri. I was driving. Yeah, I think that is where it is. I was driving. And basically like I had the excitement like I'm getting away with this. Like what the, you know what I mean? Like this is great. I'm gonna see people again. Like awesome. And then wah, 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 like the car shuts down, and I'm in the middle of this giant like highway that's like in the sky, and there's miles. I'm gonna have to walk for miles to get anywhere, and I'm just like, oh man, this sucks, dude. And a Boba Fett like ship looking, look like Boba Fett like the ship he drives, but it was all black. Comes out of the sky, and it's like basically tells me like, look, you violating this code and that code, and you're not supposed to be in this jurisdiction, and get out of the car with your hands up. So I did, and these guys that were in all black uniforms, black masks, no indication of who they were or anything like that. They just took me, zip tied me to the back of a chair, brought me to a prison, asked me what they should do with me to their superiors. You know, they had to like make a phone call, and then they just brought me back to the recording studio and said, hey, don't do that again. Like, you're not in trouble. We're not going to punish you. But next time, if you do, we're going to punish you. If you do that again, we're going to punish you. And so I was like, okay, I won't do it again. And yeah, like that was a crazy thing. It was a crazy experience.
So just to recap, that was an alter of you, or was that the real? No, that was an alter of you. And also, so that means it's the main takeaway here is that it's not just an Earth; it's a multi-planetary deal, and that's you know.
It's like that. Donald Marshall never talked about the secret space programs.
It's all interconnected.
But it's all interconnected, and I will say, I know I reached out to him because I wanted to tell him this personally, but I do believe I remember seeing him in like space and stuff. Like, so exactly. So it's like he's not just. That's just the thing they allowed him to remember for whatever reason. I think there's more to the story for him. But, you know, also I can't verify that because there's another individual in this community who looks a lot like him, even talks similar. So that's a confusing one. But that's why I would love to talk to him personally, to reach out and see what he remembers. And, you know, I don't know what he would think of me. I really don't. But I do know that, like, he's been talking about this stuff since 2012. So in a way, he paved the way for people to be receptive to what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think he's going about it actually a really solid way by only focusing on Earth. But this is, you know, it's important to stress the other stuff too. So I'm glad we're doing it. But
yeah, I know you said you wanted to focus on Earth, and I'll try to do that moving forward. It's just hard to not talk about the other stuff too because it is all related.
I have a ton of questions. I never got to, not even 10%. So I don't even know where to start, but you mentioned that you wrote Blinding Lights, which is a popular song, and maybe could you really briefly give that quick example of how they pitched the idea that your music will be heard on not just Earth but other planets as well initially?
Okay, so here's a memory that I have is there's a time where I was recording in that studio all by myself, but there's another time where I was taken there, and this is the time that I remember the initial being brought there. So this is the time that I'll talk about. I remember there's a time where I was working on I was living with this producer. His name's Ghost Effects is what I call him, or what his nickname, producer name, or whatever was. I don't know if he's still going by that. We don't talk anymore. We kind of had a falling out, but. And he, like, I wonder what he would think of this, because he, like, it's the thing where it's like, if I told him this story, he'd probably like, there's no way that's real. He probably doesn't remember any of this, but I know it's real. I know what happened. I know he was there. We both got brought to Centurion 5. We were in this craft. We're, you know, zip tied. And then they brought us to this, like, circle thing, like, that was, like, a structure kind of, like, on the side of a... not like a cliff, but like an elevated spot, you know? And yeah, it was like a circle. And we get brought into this place, and it's like a big cafeteria. And there's a spot where there's a lady working, and I feel like she might even be an ET. But there's a lady, and she kind of like, you know, is just the person that like introduces you, I guess. I don't know, but like basically I get brought there, and they say welcome, and we're like, why are we here? Because, you know, we think we're in shackles. Like, dude, this is, we think we're like, we have no idea what's going on. Like, last thing we remember, we went to bed, right? You know what I mean? Like, on Earth. So yeah, and I remember Ghost being like, oh, I gotta use the bathroom. Is there a bathroom? And that lady being like, oh, yeah, the bathroom's over there. So then I got to go sit at the table with Dennis and Max Martin. Max Martin's there. And I'm like, what's this all about? And they're like, well, we want to wait for your friend so we can tell both of you what's going on. And so I'm like, okay. And I remember being like the most uncomfortable like minute and a half, 3 minutes of my life. Like you went to take a leak, you know? It was just like I'm just sitting there like in this weird. It's a giant cafeteria, but we're the only ones there. And eventually he comes back. He comes to the table, and they're like, okay, so basically you guys are making music right now, and you have no idea, no idea. They're like, the capability that you have, you could take over the world, but you're not going to do it because you don't have the right connections. We know. We know because we know about time travel. We just know that if you don't work through us, none of your music's going to see the light of day, and you're just going to, nothing's going to happen for your music. But if you work with us, not only will your music be heard all over the world, it'll be heard on other planets, back in time, forward in time. It gets crazy, guys. Like, and you've been chosen for this because we know about you. And we're just like blown away. First of all, we're just like, what the fuck? Like, there's no other way to say it. We're just like, okay, I guess we'll do it, sure. And they brought us to the recording studio, and I remember Ghost. He did a lot of the beats and stuff like that for the weekend. Were him, and then I was singing for a lot of it. There were some of the weekend stuff where I think I made the beats and the instrumentals and stuff, but a lot of it I could tell listening to it, like because I listened to some of his albums after my memory got back, and you can just tell that Ghost made it. You can just tell it's his production, and I also remember like when we got there. I know this is gonna sound crazy, but it is what it is. David Bowie was there. Janis Joplin was there to just like welcomed us at first, like when we got there, and like there were other people too. I think Napoleon might have been one of them, but like there are people there that welcomed us and just it was really weird. And what was the memory that I want to get into? But yeah, that was the memory with Ghosts. And like
That's
I remember that they would bring other musicians in there to work with. Like I remember Kanye West getting brought in there. And yeah, like I remember like there were a few times where we actually worked with like famous musicians. Like they actually came in the studio and worked with us. The
so
only
they don't just get taken to the celebrity cloning center. They get taken off planet too. But I can only assume that when you mention Napoleon again off-world, that these are just alters of Napoleon and then another clone, because surely he's not.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep, clones, authors, which authors are confusing because it is you. It's just a way for them to compartmentalize the memories, and the personality might be a little bit different because you experience different things and look at the world in a different way. But it's you. You know what I mean? It's still you. So yeah, I might have alters that are a lot more evil than I am. I know I do. And I have but like they program a lot of our alters in this to be really. They don't really make they a lot of times they're not trying to make you like nice like Mr. Rogers. They're a lot of times trying to program people to be pretty cruel, pretty mean people, and it's a very self-perpetuating system with the way they have things set up. It's like if you step out, like they torture everybody, and if you step out of line, then you're gonna get tortured, and that's like viewed as like a sign of weakness, and like that's the whole thing is like everyone's supposed to kind of be like a monster, and if you're not, then you're weak. And then another thing with the ritual too, with the ritual stuff. So I said before how at the cloning center um, where they used me in the rituals. Well, I remember another thing. This is pretty crazy. Is they did the Loosh gathering for the songs that I made there too, and I'm not proud of this, but it is what it is. Um, there was a ritual room at the recording studio, and it had an altar, which was a stone table, and basically I would come in there, and there'd be these robed guys. There's 7 of them, 3 on one side, 3 on the other side, and one in the middle. and they were wearing like these like they look like the masks from the from the plague doctor masks.
Yep.
They look like plague doctor masks, and like gas mask plague doctor masks is kind of what they look like. And they basically, I would come in there, there'd be a naked woman lying on the table. They'd have this bowl set up, and basically, from what I gather, is we would rape the girl. I don't, the memory is kind of unclear, the order of things, but I just know that like they're there, the girl gets raped. I can't remember if it's just me or all of us. Maybe it's different sometimes. I don't know, but basically, it's the same thing. You once you kill them, or once they're organizing, you kill them, and then you're putting that loose into the song. And then at the end of it, though, they gather the blood into a bowl, and you got to drink it. You got to drink the blood. And I think they might even pass it around, and they lift up their masks and drink some of it with you, and then hand you the bowl or something like that. Like the memory's not 100% clear, probably for good reason. I probably kind of tried to block it out because it's very graphic and intense. One thing I will say is I remember one of the particular woman that was in that ritual. It wasn't a rape because she wanted to be there and she felt like it was an honor to be there, which was weird. I don't know if it was that way every time, but there was a time where the girl, she knew what was going on. She knew she was gonna basically get fucked and then killed during the point of orgasm, but she like got off on it. She wanted to do it. So that does exist. There are people that are that much of they're into being whatever, BDSM type stuff. There are people that go that far. When you can die and come back to life, I guess that's how far people will push that stuff. But yeah, it's done ritualistically though.
Right. That's pretty heavy. And this begs the question: are these guys that are doing that are demanding these songs? Are they Luciferian, and is the purpose always just to apply this mind control, or is it ever just, I don't know, just for profit? Is this their end goal? Is just to spread this fear and dispiriting of the people?
That's a great question. I think it's a little bit of both. This is a way that they make money. They make vast swaths of money, especially when you think of the fact that, like, okay, some of these famous songs that you hear on Earth that have made millions of dollars, or these recording artists that had these famous songs that have made millions upon millions of dollars, they also got counterparts on other planets doing the same thing. So think about that. That's a lot of money. And also, when a song does really well on one planet, and you kind of have to have the same vibe, same atmosphere in order for it to work right, but you're going to be able to figure, okay, it'll work well on this other planet too. So it's a way for them to make a lot of money. Now, the reality is, though, is they are Satanists. They are Luciferian. They worship the darkness. Ordo Templum Nephilim. I think it's sort of like its own specific sect. But they're all the same. They all mingle with each other and they all kind of have the same belief structure. And that's that they're at the top of the totem pole. We're at the bottom. We're fodder. They're gods. We're not. And if you're in the dark, then you deserve to be in the dark. Don't cast pearls before swine. That's in the Kabbalion, which is a sacred Freemason book. That's one of the things they say in there. And I knew that right away when I read that I would never want to be a Freemason because, okay, if they believe in that, that's not cool. Like, you're supposed to, like, try to impart wisdom upon your fellow man, not look at them as swine that don't deserve to know the truth. I don't know. I kind of get where they're coming from because, like, people spit at the truth and don't want to believe in it, but I think that's a very dark, they're just obviously of the darkness. And it, the like I said, the red rooms, the ritual sacrifice, all the stuff, it's all connected. It's all connected. It's human trafficking. It's satanic ritual abuse. A lot of the stuff that you see happening on Earth, like with the Catholic Church, for example, it's all connected to this stuff. It is. And that's what people need to start realizing is, like, the stuff that's kept in the darkness, like it's all connected, I guess.
I see. Well, we could talk about this for, I don't know, 10 hours easy, but I guess my next, curiosity is how much of the songs that we hear today are written this way? And I mean, surely not all of them are, just meant to be to get under your skin this way and stuff, subliminal. But and also, has finding this stuff out informed your own musical taste?
Okay, so when it comes to the mainstream music you're hearing on the radio, I'm gonna estimate, because I don't know. Like, this isn't a fact, right? Like, I'm not like the all-seeing eye. I don't know all. I just can guess from what I've seen and the memories that I have and how many songs I know I've written and stuff like that. It's like a lot. It's like 60%, I'd say. There's still definitely plenty of like great songwriters and stuff like that. Like that exists. Like I think that songwriting is not some intangible gift that is only imparted to the few. I think that human beings are actually really great at making music, and that's one of the really cool things about human beings, and that's not the same as other extraterrestrials, as we're very musical. Even other ETs are in awe of it, actually. And it's so. But the reason why they take people, I guess, why they took me and other certain people, and they do it well for me, it's the psychic input that I put out, that I put into the songs. And like I said, I can only guess that it's like 60%, but like there's certain people where it's really obvious, like the people that are connected to Max Martin, for instance, the people that he produced. They might not even be aware that the songs are stolen. They might not necessarily know, but he knows, right?
They might be
Um,
taken in their sleep and just being played them, and then they wake up and they think they had this idea, but it actually was just fed to them.
yeah, that can happen too. And there's also the question, okay, does Max Martin and Dennis Pop have alters?
Of course.
That's a really important question. Does Max Martin even realize he's doing this stuff? That's a good question. I'd love to have a conversation with the guy. Obviously, isn't easy to get a hold of. He's one of the more famous people on the planet. Well, most people don't know who he is, but he's very rich and powerful, and obviously those kind of people are not easy to get a hold of.
Yeah, anyone can search him on Wikipedia and they'll see that he's, I think, the third most successful producer of all time music producer. But you also said that they take songs from other timelines, which is another trip. But
Yes, they do that. There's a Songs from the Chair by Depeche Mode. I think that's a reference. Songs from the Big Chair. I think that's a reference to them doing that. Um, there's another album. Literally, there's a band called Looking Glass. Like, yeah, like there's certain, yeah, they did take songs from other timelines. It's a real thing. They do that. Um, but what was the other question? Oh
oh,
yeah, and then
if
how
you
has it
didn't,
affected my
yeah,
music taste?
exactly.
For me, this is my advice to people who are struggling with this. I have always been so I've done music in the here and now for a long time. I stopped playing shows for like 2 years. As soon as I started coming out, around this time I started coming out about being this
SSP,
victim of all
etc.
this stuff. My whole music career started falling apart because of like you could call it like a cancel culture kind of thing, like exaggerations and lies and slander, and it's messed up. But also it's connected to this because like I said, he said, Willem Dafoe said they're set up to keep, it's set up to keep you down. That talent is set up to keep you down, and that's the same thing with I had an alter tell me. I woke up and sometimes my alters will like reach out to me, like I don't know if it's telepathically or they're just in there and they're talking to me. It's hard to explain it, but basically, I had an alter reach out to me. It was Ryan Sterling, and he told me, "Hey, they're gonna ramp up the programming. They're gonna try to like make you feel isolated and miserable." And he's like, "Don't take the bait. It's all part of the programming. Like when you see it, like recognize it for what it is." And then, sure enough, I'm like going to shows and like, "You're not welcome here." I'm like, well, I'm not welcome here. They're like, yeah, you gotta leave. Like stuff like this, and I'm just like, okay, man. Like, and yeah. So, but basically, I have seen from playing music there's underground music all over the place. There's people, you if you're from a bigger city, there's all sorts of you've probably got an underground music scene of smaller bands and stuff like that that aren't, the mainstream people, and you're going to be amazed at how great some of the music is. And I guess that's my advice, is for people to just like try to be wary of listening to like the music that's like pop music that's on the radio. It's not necessarily that it's all bad, but most of it is, and most of it's mind control, even if you don't realize it. Like it's just, yeah.
Exploitative.
Yeah, and I just think that the best way to support music is just like support the smaller artists, the smaller independent artists, that the ones that aren't signed to these big record labels that are shady. There's so many people out there struggling in the music industry, struggling to just be heard. Probably partially because you got to join a little club in order to get anywhere, right? But those people are out there, and you can find them, and there's all sorts of music out there that you can listen to that isn't part of the control system, and it's part of the a lot of it's a part of the resistance too. There's a lot of music out there that's high vibration, that's trying to tell you the truth. You think of like a rapper like what's his name, Jedi Mind Tricks, and he's got a few other different names, but he'll talk about some serious real stuff in his music, and it's like, that guy's obviously not controlled by the Illuminati, right? Like, you know what I mean? Listen to stuff like that. The good music's out there, and yeah, I just feel
just
bad
usually
that,
very unpopular.
yeah, a lot of times it's unpopular, and it's not to say that every single person that's in the music industry is some sort of Illuminati shill. A lot of them that aren't aware. Like for instance, there's this movie. It's Under the Silver Lake or Beyond the Silver Lake or something like that. It's and they show in that movie how, I guess what a lot of people think in the industry is that there's just this one guy that's writing all these songs, and they show it in the music industry, and how, so like in the music industry, how it works is they'll give you, they'll sign you, and they'll be like, look, your songs are great, we like your vibe, but you need a hit song. And they're like, okay, well, you want us to write a hit song? Sure. No, that's not what we mean. We have one for you already. We have a hit. And this is just going to be your how you hook them in. Then you can do whatever you want. But this is a hit song, and we need you to play it. And actually, there's a few of them we need you to play to put on your album. And here's the recording of it. Learn it, put it on your album or whatever. And that's how it was portrayed in that movie. And that's how I think it is. Because it's obviously become this inside Hollywood legendary secret where it's like, yeah, why are they making us play these songs? Where are they coming from? Right? You know what I mean? And now it's coming out where the songs are coming from. It's not one guy living in a castle somewhere. It's multiple people. A lot of them are from super soldiers that are in the programs. It's not always like people who are like literally being farmed for their music, like a musical resource. People in the programs, a lot of times they'll play instruments and stuff like that, and they'll write music, and it'll end up out there, and it'll end up in popular culture all of a sudden. You know what I mean? That's a thing. But yeah, just I guess like it's like all the really famous music you can see, and you can know instinctively listening to it too. Like if you're aware enough to be watching this, then you can probably tell. Just like if you flip on the radio and hear something that's low vibration, it's like probably got mind control in it, right? Like instinctually, you might. I'm guessing a lot of you out there watching this might be able to just tell with your own instinct and your own heart. You know what I mean? That it's easy to tell because it's low vibration. The message is sex, money, with a lot of the rap music, of course, it's drugs and killing and money and just having cool stuff, and it's not about community and loving people.
Boats and hosts.
Yeah. And it's not to say that the entire industry is like that and that there isn't like, KRS ones aren't out there and stuff like that. But the mainstream stuff it's pretty nasty. It's like I remember just like listening to Biggie recently because I just remember just being in high school and having fun and thought his music was kind of fun. And I'm listening to his lyrics and I'm like, damn, this guy's a fucking psychopath. He's like talking about killing people. Cool. And that's just normal in our society. That's messed up, man. Same thing with Tupac. As much as I love Tupac, I actually do love Tupac. But when you think about it, he really did talk about like that thug music. it's kind of damaging to the human psyche in a way. You know, he had some positive messages in some of his songs, which is great, but you know, and then there's the whole thing where they like, you know, that they got infiltrated and used. Like I think it was Crazy Bone from Bone Thugs in Harmony. I'm sorry if I'm saying his name wrong, but he actually talks about it in an interview how like he got asked, like they got like invited to this meeting and they like told him how they wanted to promote this certain message, and if they do, it'll be good for them. And it's all connected, funneling young black men into the prison system because they make money off that, and all this stuff is real messed up stuff. And it's mind control. It's out in the open mind control. You can see it. You can see it, and it's connected to like if you talk to because I'm from the United States, obviously you're from overseas, but I've talked to a lot of black guys from Chicago who tell stories of just being barrels of guns left in the hood, like in the ghetto, like the poorer neighborhoods that they lived in. Like they just go in the alley and there's just this barrel full of guns, and it's like because they know that if they're there, people are probably going to use them, right? It's like where do you and then they put the mind control music at the same time. It's all connected to the CIA. They put the message out, be a gangbanger, at the same time, and it destroyed the black community. And this isn't me saying that like I'm not speaking disparagingly of black people and that they're low vibrational with their music. They've made some of the most high vibe every time. They're the ones who are making the high vibrational like reggae music, high vibrational. A lot of times they're making very high vibrational music, and then it gets infiltrated and destroyed from the inside out because that's how these psyops work. That's what they do.
By the way, Biggie Smalls and Tupac both were attendees at the cloning center, and not just that, but their deaths were intimately linked to that as well, obviously. But maybe the most spirit-crushing aspect of all this is finding out that even if you were to bust all their like enclaves on Earth, you still wouldn't get rid of it probably because it goes beyond this planet, and they would probably just find a way to maybe rebuild or something. And the real so-called enemies, I guess, are not just the Illuminati, but the people they're in cahoots with such as the German factions and all these factions that are they don't have the humanity's best goals in mind, I guess.
Yeah. That's a good point, a good statement to make. I would say that exposing the cloning centers is connected to being part of the galactic picture, the big picture, not being kept in the dark, realizing like there's human colonies out there and stuff. It's all connected. So for me, that's why when I say disclosure now, my good friend Brian Singh always says full disclosure now. It's got to be full. If it's not full, why even do it? and the reason why it must be full is because then we will know what's going on out there, and we will be connected to the human intelligence and military agencies and stuff that are out there that are monitoring this stuff and trying to keep a handle on it. And obviously, yeah, criminal syndicates are always going to find a way to get away with what they do. Like, look at the drug war. They could never stop the drugs. Well, obviously, they're funneling in the drugs while they're fighting a war against them. So that's a little bit of a complicated situation. But yeah, it's going to be really hard to. It's probably always going to be a problem, but we can definitely make it way less of a problem. And also, there's ways you can protect yourself with like EMF blocking technology and stuff like that. So once that technology becomes out in the open, then people will be able to protect themselves too. So it's like, I don't think it's hopeless. It is important to point out that it's going to be a complicated process, but it's definitely, it can be done. We can expose it, and we can expose it all.
Yeah, I like to think so as well. But you brought up the EMF protection, and that's the biggest, piece of news that came recently in this whole field. That Donald Marshall, who's the main name here, came finally with a way to block the transfers.
He's the hood over his bed,
the
right?
canopy,
The canopy. Well, one thing that I want to point out is that's cool, but it's like $1,000. You can also just get a hood, an EMF hood that you wear when you sleep, and that should do the job. But yeah, the canopy's great. I mean, I would love to have one if I had the money to spend on that. But yeah, for those of you out there who are looking to protect yourselves, from what I've heard, from a friend of mine that was trying to block kind of invasions and REM technologies and stuff like that. They tried just a hood and it worked for them, a friend of mine. So something to think about for people who are trying to protect themselves. I haven't bought one yet, like an idiot. I don't know why I haven't done that. I really need to. I should do that like right out I get off this interview.
Yeah, I would second that.
Yeah, I
But
found out about it really recently. So that's
yeah,
probably the reason why it's new information to me. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna get one.
it gets complex though, because apparently even Donald Marshall can't even so much as go to the toilet without feeling like he's being bilocated back in the cloning center, which is perplexing because you would think that setting up his clone takes time and stuff. So how can, and plus that it requires REM sleep. So how come he's still under threat? That is a mind boggler, but that's for another episode. But I also wanted to ask you if you were used for anything other than songs.
Yeah, rituals where they would do rituals to me, and it wasn't necessarily always connected to music. Recently I was recently I woke up and I was a child, and I was at some mansion in Kentucky, and it was like a hunting party basically, and it was in Kentucky somewhere. And I remember because the girl, I was with a girl, and she knew that they're gonna wake me up, and she said they call it, she's like, it's called and something farms, and I wish I could remember it. I remember the part that doesn't matter. She said they call it Pleasure Manor. She's like, remember, it's called something da 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 da. They call it Pleasure Manor, and the part they call it Pleasure Manor, what doesn't matter? You can't Google Pleasure Manor. You're not going to find that. But there's some mansion in Eastern Kentucky that I don't remember if I woke up there, if I was taken there, or what. All I know is I remember that girl, and I tell you, you gotta remember. They call it Pleasure Manor, and I remember that I was a boy. Oh yeah, another thing that I remember recently, another thing that I remember recently from being taken in my sleep. I'm always a boy. I'm always a little boy. Half the time I'm a little boy. I'm not even a grown ass man. I'm a little boy in a lot of these memories. Another one. This was like literally like 4 or 5 days ago. The memory I had was I was with some woman, didn't really know the woman, and I was with another little boy, and that we were at a restaurant. We're sitting at a table, and I was looking at the menu, and the other little boy was just like zonked out like this, and I was like, to the woman, I was like, what's he doing? Why isn't he looking at the menu to order his food? And she says, oh, he's using the Google Pixel. He has an augmented uh he's augmented. He's just looking in his mind. And I was like, oh, like, and that's the only memory I have of that time. It's just being like blown away, like, oh, okay. Like this, so that must have, I don't know if that was under the earth and they have cities under the earth, or if that was on another planet. A lot of this stuff depends on context. Like, and I think that's why it's so important for us to all these videos and talk to each other and just put our information out there, is because it helps us get more context so we can understand it better. Because like these memories a lot of times are like kind of disjointed, and you don't remember the full lifetime. You maybe only remember like a day or some of the more intense moments. But yeah, the more people that talk about it and put out their testimony, it's all about corroboration. You know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
about, okay, there's one person, listen to them. No, it's about listening to everyone and finding where that common core of truth is, because there's so many people saying the same thing. A lot of people don't even know each other. They haven't even come in contact with the same circles of people, and yet they're saying the same stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, usually the mythos is that people are too afraid of because they get threatened by clone torture, to get clone tortured in their sleep, and that's why they don't talk. But apparently, it's much bigger than that. Not just one cloning center, and much more
Can I
prevalent.
point something out about the
Yeah.
cloning facilities? So what they have is what they can do is, and this is Solar Warden, but this is connected to what we're talking about, so I'm going to bring it up. Um, I don't need to go into the backstory as to why. Basically, I was doing something that they didn't like, so they brought me to a cloning facility, and it was one of the Nordics, tall whites, whatever you want to call them. It was one of those guys. I call him the Ice King. Pretty sure he actually has a name, and I know his name, but I call him the Ice King because he wears the blue jumpsuit. He's got a long white beard, and he reminds me of the Ice King from Adventure Time. So that's my nickname for him. Pale skin. He's very pale skin too. Reminds me of the Ice King. So that's my nickname for him. And anyway, suddenly this isn't the only time that I encountered the guy, but basically I I was brought there, and I was brought to this room full of clones. On the left, clones. On the right, clones. And those tubes I was talking about that are slightly leaned over. They're slightly leaned over against the wall. They're not just standing up straight. They're kind of like slanted slightly. And I get brought there, and he basically said, like, I know one of your alters is doing this thing. We don't like it, and let me show you something. And I was Ryan. They activated my alter Ryan, and Ryan, when we were first colonizing Centurion 5, so part of the time travel mission is I had to be part of the crew, the first people who colonized the planet. So we built. First started like a tent city, then we built cabins. We got running water. We got plumbing. We worked our way up until hundreds of years later, it was a thriving megatropolis. Like, we started from the literal ground up. And during that first incarnation, I had a son named Benny, and we were fishing in the river, and something happened, and basically got swept up in the river and drowned. And sure, region tech existed and all that stuff, but we were left down there. We were just left down there, and the crew on the spaceship, they're like outside of time. They're not monitoring what we're doing that closely. So, like, my son died. Like, there was nothing I could do about it. And it was traumatic, obviously. And, well, what do they do at this cloning facility? They show, come here. He says, come, bring him out here. And it's Benny. And he's like, Daddy, where am I? Well, what is this all? I'm like, don't worry, son. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Daddy's here. And Ice King says, why are you lying to your son? It's not going to be okay. And of course, he starts crying more because of it. And he's like, listen, all you need to do is listen to what we tell you to do. And you can spend time with your son that you probably miss him, right? You can hang out with him and have a great old time with him if you want, or we can torture him to death in front of you. So either you listen to us and we give you hell, or excuse me, either you don't listen to us and we give you hell, or you listen to us and we give you heaven. And that's how these people operate, man. That's how they operate. They got clones of people that you love. And, after they torture you enough, you kind of get desensitized to it. For real, man. It's crazy what you do. You can kind of turn off just kind of dissociate from it. And after a while, it's like, okay, there's not much they can do. So what they'll do is they'll torture other people that you love and use the people that you love against you. And just think how messed up that is. A person that died, the last thing they remember is drowning in a river. And next thing you know, they're waking up in a clone room with some alien. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy, and that's real. That happened to me. That wasn't REM because my girlfriend had a mark on her wrist that night, and that's what made me look into, okay, what happened last night? She had a mark on her wrist, so they must have physically taken us or something. But, like, yeah, that night she had a mark on her wrist, and it's not a coincidence. But, like, yeah, they're just like, we have clones of all the people you care about, and we can use them against you, or you can spend time with them. And that's how they motivate people. And unfortunately, it gets very dark because also a lot of the clones that are being used as slaves, then they got the women sex slaves who they're motivating the other slaves with to work by rewarding the slaves with sex from the slaves. So it's like slavery perpetuating slavery. You know what I mean? It's messed up.
Yeah, and we're talking breakaways, which can be as populous as trillions of people. So I also wanted to, I was curious if you were willing to, just very quickly go over some of the shorter-lived experiences that where you were, used as pretty much the lowest thing you can think of, such as put into other female bodies and kids' bodies, and then fill in the blanks.
Well, like I said, I don't. My memories of that aren't like necessarily clear because here's the thing: is like, if your experience in one of these wake up calls, as I like to call them, like where all of a sudden you wake up and you're somewhere else. If you experience it, and it's just horror, it's just hell, like a hunting party or something like that. Our natural inclination as human beings is to bury those memories as deep as possible.
Dissociate.
So those memories that I have, they're buried pretty deep, and I don't necessarily really want to dig them up. Like for instance, like I know I was at a sex party, I know they're hunting me, I know it was a little boy, I know it was bad, but all I remember is that little girl like telling me, you need to remember this. You need to remember this, dude. Like don't forget it. Like you need to remember that this happened. They're gonna wake you up. Like she knew it was about to happen. Like that I was gonna wake up in my bed and not be there anymore. And she was trying to tell me that I needed to remember. She should have never said Pleasure Manor. She would have just said remember and the actual name. The Pleasure Manor, that's the part I remember, not the actual name of it. So frustrating to me. So freaking frustrating. But it is what it is. Maybe eventually I'll find it and be able to go there with a fucking machine gun. No, I don't know. I'm just kidding. I would never do that. That's a joke.
Yeah, but I appreciate that you also confirmed that the hierarchy doesn't end with the humans. They're not top of the food chain, just like Donald Marshall was saying as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so the tall whites and the Nephilim, the hybrids, and who else did you see there?
And what?
And what other species have you seen there? Have you for example, seen any of the vril, maybe the little ones, the little lizards, 1 foot tall lizards?
I don't remember that. I'm not saying that I haven't seen them. My memories are really, like, I got a lot of material off what I do remember, but I also don't remember a lot. You know what I mean? What I can tell you is the reptilians are definitely a part of it. The rituals, the Loosh gathering rituals, that's basically comes from like reptilian. They're really into that. They do the Loosh gathering. It's kind of modeled after them. And it's really confusing because the Nephilim are like the humanoid aliens. But I know that the Draco are involved. Yeah, I don't want to claim that I know things that I don't and put like things out there as facts that aren't. Like a lot of what I have to do, unfortunately, with the position that I'm in is like I have to kind of speculate a lot. Like I have facts. I can tell you things that are true. Like Chiron Studios is connected to clones and human sacrifice and satanic ritual abuse. That's true. That's a fact. But as far as like some of the details is like what aliens were there, who's all involved, some of the more minute specifics, I don't want to like state things that aren't true. What I can tell you is there's definitely reptilians down there. I don't remember interacting with reptilians at the clone centers. Like I don't have any specific memories of it, but I know that they're down there, and I know that they're working with them. And like I said, these rituals, a lot of them are like very Draco, modeled after stuff Draco rituals, basically. So yeah, it's all connected. And I would also like to note that as far as my understanding, the Draco and like the Anunnaki, Nephilim, whatever you want to call them, the half breeds or the full breeds, whatever you want to call them, they're all in cahoots, you know. They're friends, you know. The Draco and there's this idea that I guess I did an interview with Daryl James recently, and so it confuses the hell out of me because he said that there's a faction of the Anunnaki that's at war with the Draco.
I think they're Pleiadians, right?
Yeah, he says they're Pleiadians. It's all so fucking confusing, man. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. What I remember from my memories is the Draco and the Anunnaki, the humanoid, tall whites, the Nordics. They get along. They're friends. They get along quite well. Maybe they're not like best friends, but they have a lot of similar interests and a lot like as far as like basically like my enemy is your enemy, so we're friends. There's a whole lot of that going on with them, and just they benefit by working with each other in innumerable ways. So they do work with each other. Maybe calling it a friendship is putting it too far, but they have a good business relationship with each other at the very least.
Well, that figures, according to Penny, the Anunnaki that enslaved us are actually a subject race of the Draco. They're hybridized heavily by them. But I think there are Nordics that are against them. I mean, I can't disbelieve anything Daryl says. In my opinion, he's up there with anyone. But it's just more facets of the story that we're just getting crumbs of. But I wanted to ask you that how many attendees have you recognized in real life? And do any of them remember?
I have one friend who remembers. He probably knows more than I do. He can't talk. He's got deep connections, and I just don't even want to say his story because I don't want to put him on Front Street. I don't want to put him out there. But I have one friend that I know that has, that's down there. I also know that there's a tunnel system that's underneath Appleton that used to be by Peabody Park, and it was like catacombs, and there was even furniture and stuff in there, and some of the richer people in Appleton would go down there and party and stuff, and people would find them, and people would get brought there in nice cars. I've heard rumors about and stuff like that. So there is this like underground thing going on underneath our town, and people talk about it. But as far as the people that I remember from the actual cloning facility, the clone center, the one from the one that's probably in Wisconsin. I'm using my best guess. We're thinking Manitowoc. The remote viewer said Manitowoc. I recognize like 5 or 6 people in the here and now. There's people that are down there that probably live in Appleton that I don't even know, that I don't really interact with, that are down there. So, but yeah, the memory is of like faces and seeing other people. It's kind of limited, but like it's weird. Like I do remember there's like a cafeteria, there's hallways, and it's like people are like kind of like almost living like an alternate life down there. Like it's weird, like with that particular like the us kind of thing. But they're not all like that, right? Like, but yeah, but as far as the people that I know in the here and now that I recognize from down there, well, here's one thing. Okay, here's an interesting thing, and I guess this is something that's really messed up. And I guess I'll just say it. My girlfriend in the here and now, who is the sweetest person I know, she won't even eat animals. She's vegan. She is a clone down there that is very evil. Her name is Meredith, and she, in that red room when people were being tortured, there's like a glass room where you can watch, and she likes to just sit there and watch people be tortured. Her altar. And like that's like the opposite of her. It's like they inverted her completely. Like I said, she won't even eat animals. Like and yeah, so she's down there, and when I told her that was hard for her to wrap her mind around. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around. I mean, there's like a week there where to say that it didn't put a strain on a relationship would be a lie, but it hasn't broken us at all, and we have a very strong relationship. But yeah, it's because when you realize you're in it, it's one of those things where it brought us closer actually in the long run. It's just really hard to know that there's a version of her that's that evil. But I know that Jacob from Montauk, he eventually his soul ended up being redeemed. It's a long story, but I have versions of me that are extremely evil too. So, it is what it is. I try to forgive people. I think forgiveness is really important.
I'm sure that everyone in the world would want to know if they're used, altered and cloned anywhere else that they're not aware of. So I'm sure that there's nothing really to forgive there, but it is really heavy stuff. So I'm glad you shared it. But also, have you seen, because it's a big theme, in this subject, any arenas or death sports or like torture spectacles, high-profile humiliations or something like that?
Okay, so this is what I've experienced. Now, I'm not going to the same clone facility as Donald Marshall, obviously. It's a different one. That's what I'm thinking. What I experienced is they have the red room. And there's, like I said, the glass. You can watch. And people will watch. And one of the things I remember about Meredith, that author of my girlfriend, she's not wearing all white. She's dressed up different, dressed up nice. She's not dressed up like a slave. So it's like almost like she's one of the people in charge, which is really weird. And yeah, they'll torture people in that room, and now what they'll do is they'll live stream it on the dark web, and they make lots of money off this. They live stream it, and the people can, there's speakers in there, and the people watching on the dark web can talk through the speakers. And
Give
normally it's one man and two women. They like to get off on seeing women torture men. A lot of these people do, in like sexual ways, and seeing the women get off on it and stuff. But yeah, and they'll pay. They'll talk. I can only assume, there's dark web stuff going on, because I've done some research into the red rooms, and that's a real thing. And people don't know where they are. People always assume they're overseas or something, like in the Philippines or somewhere in the middle of the jungle that has like satellite internet access or something. But it's like, no, I think a lot of it's happening in these underground facilities, and it's actually clones. And that's why they can literally kill the people in the video, and there's no FBI that's going to be able to track it down, because I'm literally still alive. Think about that. Like, and I know that I've been used in that fashion, but obviously I don't go into the memories. It's really fucking bad. But the thing that I remember the most is they make me clean that room after they torture people, and they have like a red bag that I have to throw body parts into, like a garbage bag. It's bad, and we got to wipe down all the blood, and it's not good. And yeah, it's like I said, it's really dark. It's really, really dark. These people that really like this dark shit, like this, the hurt core, they call it. The people that like that, they know they have to hide themselves because it's so fucked up. And what people need to understand is that there's more people into it, unfortunately, than you'd think. And well, it's mostly the elite. There's a story of this guy, I can't remember his name, Debbie's Destruction or something. This guy's real. Is a real. Look up Debbie's Destruction. He's a real guy, really existed, and he made these two little girls dig their own graves before he raped them and strangled them and killed them. And that's a video, and it costed $10,000 to watch it. They found it on the dark web. People were paying $10,000 to watch it. $10,000 just to stream it. And that just shows that the people that are into this stuff are obviously powerful, obviously very wealthy, and obviously can act upon their impulses. And that's terrifying. If you think that's terrifying, you should, because it is terrifying. And I think that's really the thing that people need to understand is, like, there's this mentality that, like, look, like, you and I were in the here and now. We're normal people, and how do normal people respond to these kinds of things? It's disgusting. Normal people don't like this kind of stuff. Normal people are appalled by it, and the normal reaction is, that's not normal. There's no, like, whoever thinks that way, they're obviously some sort of psychotic anomaly, and thank God the world isn't full of more people like that. But what people need to understand is, like, there are way more psychopathic people out there acting upon their psychopathic impulses, getting away with it than you realize. And the cloning aspect of it the fact that you can buy a clone for about $10,000, I think you can spend time with me for $10,000. I think that's how much it costs. That's not that much money. It's also a lot of money at the same time. Like, so, like, yeah, like, it's important for the cloning aspect to come out because, like, yeah, we catch serial killers and stuff like that because people go missing and then people look for them. We don't catch these guys because nobody goes missing, so no one's looking for them. And once we understand that aspect of it, like, nobody has to go missing, there are clones, then we really can start tackling which is a human trafficking issue, a sex trafficking, human trafficking issue. That's the only way to tackle it, is to, like, realize, like, oh, a person doesn't need to go missing and be physically taken in order to get assaulted.
Yeah, well said. So the next thing that I was wondering about is whether you have seen not just the torture stuff, but also playing tricks or pranks, or giving people illusions, either through VR or directly through their microchip. Whether you've witnessed, because I know they enjoy doing that. For example, to James Rink. James Rink is one of these victims who was used this way.
I don't remember any of that stuff. I am pretty sure they do it to me. I do know, like, there's this woman who talks about this woman I know who briefly I met her at the Journey to Truth conference, and she was telling me some stuff about how she's like questions like what the SSP is, because she has these things where it feels real and it's happening to her, and then she realizes like it's not real, and like the Looney Tunes music starts playing and stuff like that. And I do believe it's real. And I think one of the aspects that's not being talked about enough, I guess, when it comes to all this stuff, is the fact that, we are living in a computer simulation. We're living in an artificial reality, and that's a big part of the picture that I guess isn't really being talked about that much. And because we're living in an artificial reality, they can do stuff like throw you into pocket realities. Like I've heard other people talk about being left in the white room, where it's just like it's white everywhere. It's just white. If you keep walking, it's just going to be white. It's just a white floor, and it goes on forever. And people have been left in there and stuff like that. I guess that's what I would say I remember. Someone brought that up to me. Weird tricks and stuff like that, not so much. I remember being thrown into the white room. That's just like this endless white room, and you just sit in it, and you don't know how long. It's terrifying. There's no door. There's no way to get out. There's no food to eat. There's no water. There's not a toilet. Like, you're just in this giant... That's scary as fuck. So yeah, I guess I remember that.
Oh, that's great. And about the SSP, her questioning whether it's all real. It's obviously real if you just put the hours into it. But also, even if you refuse to accept any of it, they would still be hiding something, because they are such elaborate memories that span hundreds and thousands of hours. So someone would still sense to gain something from all this, and
yeah, that's an important aspect for people to realize. Is like hundreds of thousands of hours, so much time. How many? For all I know, they are taking me every night, and I just don't remember it. And my memory is this aren't like crystal clear, but I do have memories. And then also, it's like with the man, I can tell you, for me, remembering Dennis Pop at the recording studio and the weird drug he gave me and all that, that's how I got back to the Chiron studio memories. And then finding him in the here and now, I was looking up songs that I knew they took, and then I found Max Martin and Dennis Pop, and then I found a picture of him, like, shut the fucking front door. That's literally the guy. Like, it freaked me out. Like,
so the memory came first.
Yeah, the memory came first, and then I found Dennis Pop. I found him. I talked about Dennis Pop in an interview with Penny Bradley before I found this picture. I talked about him and Max Martin, how they sounded like I couldn't place where they're from, Germany or Sweden or something like that. They had a European accent. And I talked about that memory before I figured out who Dennis Pop was, and I figured out who Dennis Pop is or was or whatever, and Max Martin as well. And then also, yeah, like I found some of the evidence too of some of the songs that they've taken from me. Like there's some proof, um, uh, like "Sweet Dreams of Rhythm and Dancing." There's this guy, Lane McRae, who was a nobody, zero, no one, not a musician, not a famous guy at all. He was a backup singer in a cover band. So I guess, yeah, he was a musician, but he was a no one. And for whatever reason, this famous singer from Rhythm as a Dancer, from Sweet Dreams of Rhythm and Dancing, her and the producer decided to have this random guy from New York or whatever be on their song. He raps. It's the worst part of the song, and it has no emotion behind it. You can feel the emotion in the rest of the song. He doesn't put out the psychic input like the singer does. You don't feel anything from it. And but anyway, he was just used as a vector. He sold them that song. That's what it was. And what it is Lane McRae, Germany stationed U.S. Air Force. Lane McRae. And I found this more times, more connections like this, like where, oh, I knew I wrote this song. Okay, let's look it up. And it's like, oh, the guy who wrote, okay, this is guys from the Air Force. This guy's from the Army. This stationed overseas in Germany. Like a bunch of different times I found that. And so some of the songs that they're taking from, like, I guess would maybe be Montauk or whatever. Yeah, you can find the evidence that they're taking them. You can find evidence. You can look into them, and you can find stuff. Also, I've looked into some of the recordings, like by Jeff Barry, Phil Spector, and the stories behind some of these songs that I know were stolen from me, or sometimes even other people, and they don't tell the same story. Like one person that was there will tell a different story than another person. There's even been like Jeff Barry will say it was recorded in New York, and then another person will say we recorded it in LA in separate interviews. I've did research, and no one's ever pointed out those contradictions other than me. And it wasn't because they took a bunch of drugs and it was the 60s. It's because they never recorded those songs. They had nothing to do with the recordings. They're just given the recordings to use them. And,
or they were given cover memories in their sleep, maybe.
They also could have been given cover memories. That's another aspect that I'm glad you're reiterating is, who am I to assume that all these people are totally aware? I'm not. I'm involved in all this stuff, and am I totally aware? No. So, to think that Max Martin is this horrible guy that's 100% aware of the stuff that he's doing, and he's some horrible, evil piece of garbage. I want people to be careful with that, because for all we know, he's a victim just like I am.
Maybe it's just an evil alter, yeah.
Yeah, it could just be an evil alter. I get the sense that it's not, though. Because they're both metal guys before they got into pop music, and metal guys love Satan. And
there's no redeeming quality to metal for you?
Oh, I like metal, don't get me wrong. It's not my favorite. It's not my cup of tea. It's not my favorite kind of music, but there's plenty of good metal out there. It's like any kind of music. There's good of any kind. But it's more like there's just like this association with heavy metal and Satan, and it's real. There's the reason why the stereotype is there is because it's real. A lot of these heavy metal guys, it's not an act, it's not a show, it's not a joke. They actually are into Satan and Lucifer. And as we know, that shit's not cool. Like, some people think it's like an edgy, fun joke because, Christianity can be pretty whack. Like, it can be pretty overbearing religion. It's ruined a lot of people's lives. So a lot of people have like this, oh, well, then Satanism must be good. But it's not. It's just, you know what I mean? Like, and yeah, I just feel like it's very likely that they knew exactly what they're doing. But who am I to say that they did? That's the thing. I can't make assumptions. I'd love to be able to talk to Max Martin. Like, I really would. But, like I said, he's not an easy guy to get a hold of. I can tell you...
He might just put on, the facade that he doesn't know, whereas he actually knows.
Yeah, so it's like, what's the point even, I guess?
But So going back to the cover memories and the illusions and stuff, they actually go out of their way to claim that it's the dream and it's the astral realm, and that they have the technology to, in the case of the REM transfers, to make it harder for you to actually remember than comparative to other programs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to remember any of the stuff, to be fair.
Also, another way to validate the stuff is that a lot of these memories actually get triggered completely by happenstance, unintentionally, such as MRIs or just talking to other people, which proves its validity, right?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, no one has to convince me, right? So I agree with you.
And so you also remember very incriminating stuff, oftentimes, that no one would want to, go public with. And there's also the fact that, you have checkups with sensors after the SSP service, for example, to make sure and mind wipe you whenever there's something that they consider a threat. Anyway.
Yeah, they did that to me a lot when I was a kid. Like I found out later on in life, friends were like, "Yeah, you would talk about being on Mars and all this stuff." I'm like, "What? I talked about that when I was a kid?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I don't remember that." So yeah, I don't know. They do that. They will periodically mind wipe us.
Yeah. And so, of course, that also goes hand in hand with the alters. And in your experience, have you found that splitting humans' consciousness is ever like beneficial, or is it always like depraved?
It's never beneficial. It's always depraved.
Yeah, probably down the line there's a way to do it like naturally, otherwise it wouldn't exist. But the way it's being abused now, it's not
No,
kosher.
I just think you think about it. Your why would you want to break your own consciousness? You're making
Well,
yourself lesser than what you really are
I
by doing
guess
that.
there's a case to be made that it's the way that consciousness operates throughout the universe is just fractals itself. But it is not the natural way to do it, of course.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, sure.
So also, when you say something that they don't want you to say, they punish you or threaten you. Am I right?
Not exactly. I mean, I thought I would get a lot of retaliation from talking about this stuff, and I guess, like, for instance, like they made me watch Willem Dafoe's teeth get ripped out. That would be an example of retaliation. There's probably a lot of stuff they did to me that I don't even remember. Oh, you said this in this video or whatever. I don't know, but um, let me just put it this way. I must have some protection. I think we all do right now. I think that somebody in my shoes doing what I am doing now 20 years ago would be dead. So that tells me that things must be heading in the right direction. And this idea that there are white hats in the military, meaning people that are on our side that are trying to protect us, that's got to be true. If it wasn't, then I would have a lot more dead friends in this. And fingers crossed that I can continue to say that, because it is scary coming out about this stuff. It's horrifying. And I do remember that when I did come public, the first thing that Penny Bradley, I came public through her show, and the first thing she did was show me a list of people that had been in her show who had died under mysterious circumstances, and there was quite a few people. And she's not even that big of a name. I mean, to us she is, but to the average folks out there, they don't know about her. So that was very scary. But the way I looked at it is, I have to say no to what they're doing to me and say that I don't want them to do it, and I have to let them know that I recognize that they're doing it by letting everyone know that I recognize that they're doing it. And yeah, this isn't easy for me to do, to come out and talk about this stuff, especially because I know that I've been very evil in these programs and done really evil things. I've hurt people. I mean, I told you about the ritual that we did at the recording studio. I mean, obviously that's not a very cool thing to do. Rape and kill someone and gather their loosh, but that is how it operated, and I more or less was forced into doing that too. Like with all these programs, whether it's Knockoff and Solar Warden or just the clone programs here on Earth. You listen because if you don't, they're going to torture you. And sometimes that means you got to hurt other people, otherwise they're going to hurt you. And it's unfortunate, but it's a self-perpetuating system of just torture and violence. And yeah, it is what it is. Like it sucks, but I don't know. It's a really tall order to say like, okay, we're gonna stop this form of human trafficking. We're gonna stop the cloning centers. We're gonna change this. It's obviously a tall order, but you don't just not try. You don't just give up because you know it's gonna be a monumental task. You try to start somewhere. And the first place to start is just people giving their testimonies about their memories at these places. And if you're watching this and the reason why you found this is because you resonate with it, because you've experienced the same things, and you're on the fence over whether you should talk or not because people think you're gonna think you're crazy, look, people, or viewer, whoever you are listening to this, I can understand because you don't want to like, get your life ruined, you don't want to get your reputation ruined, but you also need to understand that it's important for other people to be validated, and it's important to give more and more testimony to the fact that this is real and that people from all over the place are experiencing this. And yeah, I would say to anybody thinking about coming forth with testimony, if they're afraid of their reputation being ruined, you can always use a pseudonym. You can always change your voice. Maybe that's a little bit too much. Or you can even accept the fact that a lot of the people that you're afraid of finding you talking probably won't because they're not looking for it. So but yeah, I just say the more people that come forward, the better, because it validates the fact that it's real, and it is important to validate that it's real. Sure, we have plenty of people on board in this community or whatever you want to call it, but it is important to get the normal people on board and understand that this stuff is happening and it's real.
Yeah, well put. Also, just to quell the notion that the whiteheads are, already have it on lock and stuff, and it's all done and dusted. You would say that these abductions are just as prevalent as they were when they began. I am assuming in the 90s for you, just as frequent.
Oh yeah, it's still happening, and I think that okay, this is a kind of a complicated subject, the white hats thing. Like, I think that we need to rely on ourselves for disclosure, and due to the fact that the military has abused its power so much, it's basically come to the point where they're distrustworthy. So to expect them to be the spearhead of the movement and get the truth out there is maybe naive, but also there are people in the military, like you're seeing now with these whistleblower testimonies being brought before Congress. There are people that are risking their lives to bring this information forward that are in the military-industrial complex, and to act like their service to their fellow men and their country and the planet Earth isn't something we should not to act like that's something we can take for granted. No, we have to respect and accept that these people are putting their lives on the line, and not only that, that there are the people in the military who are out there who are trying to create change and who are trying to protect us and stuff like that. They're wholly important, and they deserve, our respect to be commended. But in the same breath, like I said, we can't just trust the military to be disclosure. We have to force disclosure. We have to make it so that people can come forward with their testimony. There needs to be like a Montauk tribunal. There needs to be a lot of things need to happen, but I think that it's really one of those things where we all have to work together. The military is doing their part right now. There are people in the military doing their part, trying to make things happen. They are not all powerful. They cannot just shut down these systems overnight. They can, throw little sticks into the gears of the machine that are turning and try to sabotage things and, make little impacts here and there and not follow orders here and there. But at the end of the day, they kind of are stuck in the same system. So it's kind of up to like a joint effort of civilian disclosure where we're telling our stories, we're telling the truth, we're putting the message out there. And then those white hats out there that are in the military, they need to continue what they're doing. Are they as numbered as they need to be? I don't know. I don't know if it's half and half or like what the numbers look like, but I just know that, yeah, they're out there. They can't shut down the system overnight, but also like they got to be out there, and God bless the guys in the military that are fighting against this stuff. Like I have nothing but respect for them, and I'm just not going to depend on them either. That's all.
Yeah, I believe as you go nearer to the surface, just the crust part of the, interior of the planet is more towards negative. But as you go more inside, more to the more elevated, whatever densities, you get the good guys more so, they have their own firepower as well. But final question, just because I'm, worried about this maybe more than anything else as far as disinformation goes. Have you ever been asked to present either the cloners or ETs, to present them in like a certain sanitized way, like say this but not this?
No. They seem to think that I belong to them, and they seem to think that me talking doesn't really matter because normal people don't care. They've never asked. They don't communicate with me like that. They've never ever come in the here and now and like, hey, we're warning you. You need to say this, or even in the cloning programs, they've never. I mean, they might have threatened me and I don't remember it, but what would be the point in them threatening me if they're not going to let me remember it? So, yeah, I don't know.
No, it's a good answer. I'm glad to hear it. So yeah, I'm grateful you gave me this interview. First of all, it's pretty much unheard of outside of Donald Marshall, a full interview on cloning centers. Usually just hear bits and pieces.
Yeah, if you get more questions and you want to do more, we can do a part 2 if you want, because I know that you've had a lot of questions, so it's up to you.
By all means, yeah. That'd be great. So yeah, and also I'm gonna link to one of your songs just to prove that you do have, the skills to back up the songwriting credentials and stuff. And yeah, hopefully this subject is continue to gather momentum. I see that it kind of is, like with the whole clone rap phase and movies about cloning and stuff.
Yeah, well, look at this. This is something interesting that I feel like I should bring up before the interview ends because it's just so crazy to me. Jamie Foxx, it's like very obviously cloned now. You can see before and after, he was much. I mean, there's a chance maybe he did some sort of skin lightening or something for whatever reason. That'd be weird, though. He looks totally different. And lo and behold, he's in some movie about Tyrone got cloned.
They cloned Tyrone.
Yeah, they told Tyrone got. That's so wild to me. That's like them rubbing it in their faces almost. I'm going to watch that movie tonight. I haven't watched it yet, but that's very interesting. I just thought I'd point that out.
Yeah, honestly, ever since getting red pilled about SSP and stuff, I've been completely unable to stomach a single movie, not even so much as 2 minutes. That's just
really
me. Yeah. I used to be a cinephile, but anyway.
Well,
games
that makes me wonder if you're in this stuff.
So far, I haven't heard any reports, and I'm glad. But also, if anyone did see me, I'm curious to know, so don't hold back. But yeah, I just kudos to you for coming on and talking about this stuff. Hopefully, it won't come with any repercussions. And yeah, it would be great to catch up later at some point, maybe in a month or two. So
sounds good.
Well, talk to you later. Bye.
God bless.